Thank you.
Hi guys, can you hear me okay? The mic is good? Okay. Hello, welcome to BuzzFeed.
Hello. By the way, I loved walking down the little corridor here because you had like unlimited candy bars.
Did you get a Milky Way?
Of course I got a Milky Way. Next you need the Mars bar, and then you'll complete the cosmic presence of candy bars in your facility. Yes.
So you probably won't want to go agree or disagree with this, but you are probably the most famous scientist in the world, or one of them, and you're also an astrophysicist. Why is it
I might put Stephen Hawking above that.
Okay. So why is it that all the most famous scientists are physicists?
So that's an excellent question, and I've thought long and deeply about this. It's not just physicists. You know Hawking, not specifically for being a physicist, but for the kind of physics he applies to the universe. He's done physics that is more obscure that you knew nothing of, but the physics you know him for relate to black holes, to the Big Bang, to the history of time, and these are all sort of astrophysical, cosmological topics. You all heard of Carl Sagan. He was in this field as well. What you know that Einstein did is primarily his work that relates to relativity and the universe. You probably know less about what he did with regard to quantum physics. So I think the answer here is not that the physicists get the attention, it's that if you do work on the large-scale universe, whether you're an astrophysicist or a physicist, that gets attention. Mm-hmm. And so I'm privileged that I'm professionally a part of a community where the public has a deep and inherent interest in what we do. Almost no matter what the result is. Is it a new planet, the search for life, we're landing on a comet, black holes collide, the edge of the universe, the Big Bang, we want to travel through the universe, a rocket blows up, a rocket succeeds, all of this makes headlines. And as a result, I'm like on the speed dial for many of the news gathering headquarters, and I live in New York City, so I'm an easy date for them. So much of my appearance in media derives not from me having marketing people to put me on a show, but the fact that the universe itself has called and the press has responded. Yeah.
So your show, Star Talk, it's now in its third season, and it's had...
on television, yeah.
Television.
It started as just a plain old terrestrial radio show, and you didn't realize you have to distinguish terrestrial from satellite these days. So it started out as a terrestrial radio show, then it jumped to podcast, as well as the radio show. Then it went to satellite radio. Then it jumped species again and went to television. And it also now has like Star Talk, the book, which I was skeptical that it could turn out okay, because it's a book of our capturing the soul and the essence of the interviews that I conduct with people hewn from pop culture, in which we explore all the ways that science plugs into their lives. That's the nature of the show. And how are you going to put that in a book? Because I have a comedian with me, and we're just chewing the fat. But it was National Geographic Books that says, we can do this. And then looking back on it, I say, how could I have possibly been skeptical? This is National Geographic Books. If anybody knows how to make a book that looks beautiful, contains good content, it's going to be National Geographic.
Yeah, so in the first two episodes that have aired of this season so far, I was pretty struck by, so you had Whoopi Goldberg on and Mayim Bialik, who will always be Blossom to me. And I feel like they both really dug deep into some pretty weighty issues about women and minority representation in science. Whoopi talked about black characters on Star Trek. Mayim talked about being a female scientist and how relatively few female scientists there are. And I'm just wondering if that was one of your explicit goals of the show.
No. Well, what happens is I get interviews with celebrity guests wherever and whenever I can obtain them. If I'm in LA for one reason or another and some people come available, we bring in the cameras and I just talk to them for 45 minutes. And we talk about anything that matters to them that I can then highlight the role that science may have played in it. It's also a geek safe space when I interview them, so they can confide in me that maybe they've memorized a few digits of pi, but that doesn't play well at the Emmy Awards. Or if they have secret superhero fantasies. And so we share this, and it just comes out. Once we get the full spectrum of topics, we then pick and choose from those and cut it into the show. So it's not my goal, but if it matters to them and it touches on the role of science in our lives, in pop culture, in civilization, then it lands in the show. Mm-hmm. So it mattered to both of them, and so it came out. But my favorite part of the Whoopi Goldberg interview was she wanting a superhero. This was aired last Monday. She wants a superhero that kind of looks like her. I quote, with a big behind like hers. With, quote, chest hanging down to the floor like hers. And I said, well, that's an odd request of a superhero. And she said, in that way, when she lines up all the criminals, she just slap them across the face by swaying her chest. This was the conversation I had with Whoopi Goldberg. So when you have comedians and clever and intelligent people like that, who are also have a sort of a geek, sympathetic element to them, you get very interesting answers to questions that might have otherwise just gone a very standard way.
Mm-hmm. If you had to grade Hollywood on how it represents the average scientist, what grade would you give it? How are they doing?
Today?
Yeah.
I give it A-.
A-?
Oh, yeah.
That's pretty high.
Well, if you can have a $100 million movie with multiple marquee actors, each of whom has won an Academy Award, and put Matt Damon at the top of that, and have him take the whole movie invoking clever and innovative applications of science, engineering, technology, and math, we're doing good.
That's The Martian.
Together, class? Yes, that was The Martian.
Okay, got it. I saw that one.
So that's a movie where the suspense of the film normally carried through interpersonal emotions, and that film was carried through the lens of science. And so it's not that you cared whether people were in love, you cared whether he would not die. Mm-hmm. And you were intrigued by what next thing he would do to not die. So I'd give it an A-. This is a much higher grade than I would have given it decades ago, where the one scientist in the movie was the wire-haired, lab coat donning person who they would ask, oh, Doc, is the world going to end? And then they would say yes or no, and then you would move on, caring about the social, interpersonal, familial relationships of other characters. And the scientist was never fleshed out as a full-fledged participant, emotional participant in society. You didn't know if this scientist was married, had kids, was sad or happy. So we were, in a sense, denuded of the properties that any writer is giving to any character. And so I'm not surprised that science would be viewed as a kind of a heartless, cold activity that you do if you're a social reject. In modern times, that's not the case, and I think it began, just my read of history here, I think it began with CSI, Crime Scene Investigation, now in its 4 incarnations. It featured scientists solving crimes, and they were good-looking, and maybe you want to be one of them one time. They were fully fleshed out, and they were invoking, geology, chemistry, biology, forensics, all of this to solve the crimes in front of them. And anecdotally, chemistry professors of the day noted that the ranks of chemistry majors was rising, especially that of women. So I saw that as early in this. And now the #1 show on television, I think last I checked, in any genre, is The Big Bang Theory. Consider that if you type The Big Bang Theory into Google, the TV show comes up ahead of The Origin of the Universe. And I'm still kind of torn about that. I don't know. I like the fact that it's getting out there. I don't quite know yet whether, but it's a statement that science is rising up in our culture and becoming something meaningful and significant, especially to people 35 and under.
Yeah. Yeah, scientists are real people, sometimes, for better and for worse. One of the things we're really proud of here
What
at
do you mean for worse? What does that even mean?
So one of the things we're really proud of this year is one of our science reporters, deGrasse, who's right there, reported on several really big stories of sexual harassment in science. One of them, probably the most famous one, was a big exoplanet guy, Jeff Marcy at Berkeley, who ended up resigning when it came out that he had sexually harassed his students. Do you have any thoughts on the Marcy case and more broadly on this problem of sexual harassment in science?
So I think it made news because it was something that was not previously discussed. But was not a new problem. If you went to anyone in the field, the women in the field at conferences, everyone's got a story, okay? So it was not new, it just made the news. And I think my field is one of the most open about this than any field. So it's not like astrophysics is specifically different in these kinds of matters. I think if you park the curtains in any of the fields, you find it. So the issue is not sexual harassment in science. The issue is sexual harassment in the workplace, which includes scientific workplaces. So I don't see that there's some special kind of solution to that problem needed to be invoked in a scientific community. It's a general issue in the workplace, which we've already known about, and now you see it in other workplaces that you maybe never had the occasion to think about.
Right.
So that's how I see it. And so it's a societal problem, not, fix your house, then somehow society will be better. No, it's a society problem, requiring, I think, society-wide solutions.
A lot of people say it's related to the fact that there's an underrepresentation of women in science, maybe more than some other fields.
Oh, okay. To the extent that that's true, sure. But I bet you go to professions that might even be 50-50, it's not going to be absent of sexual harassment.
No, sure.
I bet. Now, I've not been sexually harassed, so I don't have firsthand data, but I know people and I know their conduct in public and in private enough to guess that the percentage of women in a field is not going to necessarily change the likelihood of sexual harassment. Now, the issue that was raised is not how many women versus whether there's sexual harassment, but if there's sexual harassment, what effect does that have on the ranks of women in the field? That's another dimension of this. And so science rose up in the attention of people because in the physical sciences, women are underrepresented relative to the population. So that raises the question, does this hostile harassment environment keep women away? That's where that question arose.
And an empirical question, I guess you would say.
Yeah. I mean, well, it's hard because there are women who enter the field, and then there's a leaky pipeline problem. Because you could say, the numbers are great coming up at the graduate school level, so just wait a few years and all will be well. Well, the numbers have been high at the lower levels for a long time and thin at the upper levels for longer than the time it would have taken you to move through those ranks. So it's called the leaky pipeline problem, which may be more subtle than just saying, there's sexual harassment. For example, when you are making a name for yourself in the field to get a tenured job, that's right when you are at sort of baby generating age. So if you want to have kids, that subtracts time from the intensity that you can give to the laboratory. And now that counts against the women relative to the men. So what are the policies related to that, for example? And if they're not forward thinking, it could just be a force tamping down the numbers of women who rise up and stay with the field.
Yeah. Okay. No good transition here, but
by the way, in Star Talk, as you noted, these topics have come up, as well as issues with the transgender community and as sort of a next wave in the social reaction to just somebody who happens to be different from you, or different how you thought they should have been, and then how people react. So there's also some of that in here. We talk about the neuroscience of it and the like. So, and it's all because we had people on where that was what they talked about. And that's so it lands here.
Yeah.
So this book is not simply the science we want you to know, it's the science that touches pop culture icons that you've all heard of and care about. Yeah.
Cool. So yesterday, Elon Musk announced SpaceX's plan to send people to Mars. I think the timeline was that people would go by the 2020s, and then by the 2060s, there'd be a human settlement there. Can you give us some real talk on that timeline?
I'm perhaps the most skeptical among space enthusiasts out there. And let me give direct evidence of that. I wrote a book a couple of years ago called Space Chronicles, Facing the Ultimate Frontier. But that's not the title that I submitted the manuscript under. The title I submitted was Failure to Launch, the Dreams and Delusions of Space Enthusiasts. And the publisher said, no, we can't have failure in the title, we can't. And they said, wait, wasn't there a movie with this? I said, yes, there was. I'm using this phrase literally. And this is a book where you're allowed to do things literally. Failure to Launch, because you know the movie Failure to Launch with Matthew McConaughey and
Sarah Jessica Parker.
Sarah Jessica Parker.
I saw that one.
Like, okay. Yes, I know there's a movie with that title. That's why I'm using the title, and I get to use it literally. And so they weren't getting it. So we denuded that title to just... all right, my point is, so I'm as skeptical as they come about the promises that are made. However, we should be privileged to even declare, we should feel privileged that we can say that there's a person who walks among us who is thinking that way, who is thinking Mars is a destination and I want to colonize it. And he's not just saying it and writing books about it because talk is cheap. He is putting his money behind it and designing spacecraft to make it happen. So I will not stand in his way. I will say, go for it, and I will sign up, not first. Have him send his family, his mom, see if that...
He's not sending his mom.
You got to put the test cases there first. One of my concerns about going to Mars is for us to live there, we'd have to... Oh, hi, people up on the balcony. Hey, I just saw you guys. Hey, cool. Good. This is the top of my head. You got that? Okay. What was I talking about before I interrupted myself? Mars. My concerns, thank you. See, somebody's paying attention here. If we go to Mars, you're going to need like a HAB module, a habitat, with vending machines and things. And I'm thinking, if that's how you're living on Mars, you're really living on Earth on Mars. You're not actually living on Mars. Maybe you'll have some machines that'll recycle materials or extract fuel from the... So that's fine. NASA calls that ISRU, in situ resource utilization, so you don't have to bring everything with you. That's good. I don't have a problem with that. But what you really want to do is terraform Mars, which we don't know how to do yet. But once you do that, you just move to Mars and buy a house and live there. Then we'd be a genuine multi-planet species, rather than a one-planet species with a branch of us living in a life support bubble. So the reality of living in a life support bubble and declaring that we are now two-planet species, I think is overstating the case. The argument that so many people use, Elon Musk, Stephen Hawking included, the argument is we need to be multi-planet in case we trash Earth or some disaster happens, then all the eggs are in one basket and we go extinct. And I'm thinking, if we in fact have the power to terraform Mars, to turn Mars into Earth, then we'd have the power to turn Earth back into Earth. So that in fact, it's not the solution to having trashed Earth. Because what you need to do to make Mars livable will be more than what it would take to restore Earth to some condition that we need. So they're just this is kind of what I talk about in this other book. They're just practical issues related to the relationship between your ambitions, how you execute it, and what would actually be the case when the time arose. One of them was, is there a super virus that takes us out? Well, that's not a destruction of the environment. That's a runaway biological virus. Well, Mark Zuckerberg just announced a plan, which is completely in reach, more in reach than colonizing Mars, to rid the human species of all disease. That is not an out-of-reach goal. The day we understand viruses better than we do, and bacteria and how they reproduce and how they evolve, you can track where they're going, you can stand ahead of them, block them all out. And those who do not believe in evolution, they can opt out of this plan.
Darwin Awards.
Yeah, and then they will be the most diseased people on Earth.
All right.
I'm just saying.
I got to ask you.
That's how that will play out. Yeah.
I got to ask you about a couple of tweets. We got a ton of questions from BuzzFeeders about your tweets. In March, you tweeted that Jesus would vote for Bernie, and in August, you tweeted that we need a none of the above choice on the ballot. So are you going to vote? And what do you think of the election this cycle?
Okay, so let's start with the tweets. Okay, so it may not seem this way, but it's really true. My tweets hardly ever, I can count on one hand, hardly ever express an opinion. What I do is I provide a perspective that will help inform your opinion, so you go and do whatever you want based on this new information or new perspective that you now have. So all I said, I didn't just come out and say Jesus would vote for, they're always if-then statements. So, because that makes it a self-contained thing. So I didn't say Jesus would vote for Bernie. I said it differently than that. I said, who would Jesus vote for? Because that's, what would Jesus do? It's a Christian mantra. So I said, who would Jesus vote for? Torture and walls would be non-starters with him. So he'd probably vote for the Jewish New Yorker from Vermont.
That's exactly what the tweet was.
Yes.
I paraphrased it.
So that's why I said probably. Now, if you have a better argument for why he would have voted for Cruz or Hillary or anybody else, go ahead. But no one could make an argument. And so I thought it was kind of an objectively true statement, given what we know of Jesus' teachings and given what we know of what everyone was saying in the campaign. So that's all. Mm-hmm. That's what that was. Now, then the Bernie Sanders campaign. Oh, so we hear you're a Bernie supporter. No, I said Jesus would support her. Because they're thinking I'm somehow secretly expressing an opinion. I'm just offering perspective for people.
And none of the above?
And there was another one. I said, if we are a Christian nation, as so many assert we are, it leaves me to wonder which semi-automatic rifle Jesus would choose. The AR-15 or the AK-47. Again, it's an if-then statement. Mm-hmm. And I just put it out there. Because if you say, we're a Christian and we're this and that, give me my gun back, how do you reconcile this? And there's a passage in the Bible where Jesus endorses carrying a sword, it turns out, which in the day you might imagine be the equivalent of a gun. Fine. So then decide which of those two. People voted back and forth. He'd use an AR-15 because it's American, and Jesus is American, to get one of these. And then others were, clearly he'd use the AK-47 because that is the weapon of the downtrodden and the oppressed and the ones that trying to take back their rights. Mm-hmm. So, but I wasn't expressing an opinion. It was just a little thought experiment that I had people participate in. The one that really pissed people off, you must have missed this one because you would have led off with it. The one that really pissed people off was 2 years ago. Okay? Christmas Day.
I was going to spare you of this.
Oh, that's fine, that's fine. Christmas Day, the tweet was, on this day, long ago, a child was born who, by the age of 30, would transform civilization. Happy birthday, Isaac Newton, born December 25th, 1642. People lost their minds over that tweet. And I said, well, it has the benefit of being 100% accurate. But there were headlines, Tyson trolls Christians on...
Which you weren't doing at all.
No, I'll tell you why I wasn't, because earlier I had to tweet about Rudolph. I said, Santa knows physics. Red light penetrates fog much better than blue light. That's why Benny the blue-nosed reindeer didn't get the gig. Earlier, I posted a series of photos of the Macy's Christmas windows because little Timmy, or whatever his name is, his dream was to tour the planets with Santa, and every next window, he's in a Santa spaceship with a bubble, and I forgot whether the reindeers are suffocating in the vacuum of space or not, but they're space reindeers, and each new one, he's visiting a different set of planets. I photographed those planets, those windows, and I posted those to my Twitter stream. So I said, congratulations to Macy's for bringing the universe into Christmas. Okay, so you have to cherry pick if you want to assert that somehow I'm declaring some opinion. It's just I'm sharing observations with you. It's what the world looks like to me as I do this. So the none of the above came about. So the tweet was, maybe the ballot should contain a third choice. None of the above. If it gets more votes than the next leading candidate, then you have to then the election is a do-over and new candidates have to run. That's a suggestion. I didn't pull that out of my Uranus. I had visited Australia. Apparently, it's a law that everyone there has to vote. 100% of the citizens. And if you don't vote, you are fined. Mm-hmm. And on the ballot and on every ballot is the choice none of the above. So that even though you're forced to vote, you're not forced to vote for a person. You can use your voting privilege to express your dissatisfaction. So I heard so many people complaining, I just thought maybe we should have a none of the above option. So I suggested that.
Okay, total hypothetical.
Then people said, does that mean you're not voting? No! I'm just putting out information for people. I don't care if you know my opinions. I don't care. All right? There are pundits out there where they spend their entire life getting you to agree with their opinions. That is not me. I don't care that you care anything about my opinion, about anything. I just want you, as an educator, I want you to arrive at the most informed opinions that you possibly can. Otherwise, we are not actual participants in a free democracy or an informed democracy. We live in a delusional political state where you vote for what you think is true, not for what is actually true.
Right.
And that's a recipe for the beginning of the end of a free society.
So I think we're going to open it up to questions now. So all of you guys who want to hear his opinions, you can ask directly.
And something else. People have asked me my opinion, and then I offer my opinion, and then the media says, if Tyson had his way, it would be this way for everybody. It's like, no, somebody asked me my opinion. I'm not standing up on some soapbox declaring the world should be one way or another. No, this is just, it's an offering. Fold it into whatever you want to think. Vote however you want.
All right. Who's got a good question for Dr. Tyson?
Oh, there's someone behind the camera that you can't see. You got to be loud and obvious.
Are there microphones?
We can repeat the question. Go ahead.
Oh, I'll repeat. Okay.
Yeah.
I recently learned about the holographic universe, and upon learning about it, I got a bit of existential crisis because I didn't want to be a hologram.
So she learned recently about the holographic universe and then went into existential depression because she realized she doesn't want to be a hologram, okay?
So I just want to know really how I can feel better about this.
You want to be able to feel better about being in a hologram. Yeah, it could be worse than that, by the way. It could be much worse than just being a hologram, because in some work done a few decades ago, initiated a few decades ago, and forgive me, I forgot the name of the philosopher who advanced the idea, he was seeing that we have the power to create worlds on a computer. Think of what a video game is. It's a world with its own laws. Think of them as laws of physics. If you have a super powerful computer, we can program everything into it, including the neurosynaptic thoughts of the characters you portray. You've created another universe. Now suppose those characters that you've created, on their perception of free will, say, I want to create a simulation. I want to create my own video game. And they create a video game within your video game. And if this goes all the way down, then the total number of universes that are out there will be dominated by simulations rather than by the one real universe that started it all. So statistically, we are more likely to be in a simulation than in the one real universe. A simulation of some super intelligent being that's just being entertained by us. Maybe every now and then they get bored, so they throw in characters to stir the pot and make it more interesting for them to observe. I'm just saying.
Well,
so I don't know what makes you feel worse or better, being in a hologram or being just the simulation created by somebody in the basement of his house. You know, I don't know. But I can tell you this, that the universe is not only under no obligation to make sense to us, it's under no obligation to make us feel good either. So get over it. No.
Okay, right here.
No, just the answer is don't invest so much emotion in the universe. Just drink it all in as just a fun intellectual cocktail. Okay. Another question.
Well,
You can take. You're in the front row. You just take this. Mm-hmm.
thank you. Don't you think Gravity was just kind of a fun movie, though?
Deep within that comment is the reference to the dozen or so tweets I put out that noted that there were certain scenes that were missing some fundamental physics. So I saw the film, and I said, wow, that wouldn't quite happen that way. And so I tweeted, I said, mysteries of gravity. Why is it that, for example, Sandra Bullock's bangs always pointed downwards, though she was in zero G? Everything else is floating around, except her hair. So I just thought, why is Sandra Bullock, a medical doctor, touching my Hubble Space Telescope? Get her the hell off my telescope. She's a medical doctor. There's no spleen, lungs, or kidneys in my Hubble Space Telescope. Why is it that she has George Clooney at... Sorry. No? Why is it she has George Clooney at the end of a tether just dangling there, and she wants to go save him, but she has limited oxygen, and he knows this, and he doesn't want her to save her because then they both die, so he does the manly, brave thing, and what does he do? He lets go, drifts away, he dies, then she can't save him at all, and that way she saves herself. And I'm thinking, they're in space, all right? He's holding on to the other end of a tether that all she has to do is just tug it, like that. And then he will drift towards her, holding on to the other side of the tether. They could have played that with their helmets slowly. There's like love tension, sexual tension between. The helmets just get started, and then, you know, the helmets hit one another, and then they can't kiss because the helmet's in the way. That could have been an interesting scene if they did the physics right. Not only that, she's not swinging him around, where if he lets go, he'd fly off at a tangent. He's just stationary there. So if he let go, it would still be there. He wouldn't just... So I made these observations. I only make observations such as those in movies that have earned it. It got so much physics right that I felt obligated to point out to those who saw the movie where they got the physics wrong. And I think my tweets are deeply misunderstood. I'm a misunderstood Twitter user. Because my goal was to enhance your movie-going experience and increase your depth of awareness of what is, what could be, what is not. And just people say, oh, Tyson hates the movie Gravity, and he logged it. No, I love the movie. Again, people thought I was expressing an opinion. I was citing where they got the physics wrong. I did not say whether I liked the movie or not, because I don't care whether you think I like the movie or not. That's for you. You like it. Why should whether I like it affect whether you like it? You're your own person. Form your own damn opinion. This is just information for you. And so it reminds me of Harry Truman, the Give Him Hell Harry. They said, Harry, why are you always giving people hell? And he says, no. I give them the truth and they think it's hell. So I just put out the truth and people somehow think I'm on some opinionated high horse. No. And the fact that people kept getting upset by this, I've pared back my tweets about movies. Because I was failing in my intent to enlighten people's movie-going pleasures. Because people just, in one case, someone just said, shut the fuck up, okay? That was the tweet. Can I say that on live? So, if I'm annoying you by sharing this information, that is not my intent. I don't ever have to do it again. Now, the one time I did express an opinion, it was an opinion. After Force Awakens, Star Wars, and this was just audaciously opinionated. I said, BB-8 is way cuter than R2-D2. And everybody 12 and under agreed with me, and everybody 40 and over disagreed, and I got a mixed batch in between. That was clearly just an opinion. Oh, then I said, oh, by the way, BB-8, a smooth metal rolling spherical ball, would skid uncontrollably on sand. You skid on sand with tires that have traction on them. But not BB-8, nope. Just some missing physics there. So I did this, but I don't know that I'll do it because I don't need to upset people. But I will leave you with this thought regarding commenting on films. People come and say, it's just a movie. You must be terrible to see a movie with. I would tell you this right now. If you were an expert on cars, and you went to see a movie that took place in 1958, and there was a 1962 Bel Air parked in the street, you would cry foul. You would say the set director didn't know what they were doing. If you were watching a Jane Austen period piece, and the carriage drives up to the country home, and somebody gets out in tie-dyed bell-bottoms, you would cry foul. You would say, that is not how they would have dressed. You've taken me out of the moment. The costume designer deserves to be fired. And no one would fault you for making that observation, would they? In either of those two cases. But now you're going to deny the scientists the same access to critical commentary of a movie?
Can we do one more? Caroline, you have a question, right?
Yes.
Okay.
So speaking of women in space,
She said, speaking of women in space, the Sandra Bullock. Oh, by the way, my Gravity tweets ended up getting picked up by NBC Nightly News, The Today Show, and Saturday Night Live's Weekend Update. It was like the NBC trifecta. And in it, Seth Meyers, who read the bit, he said, astrophysicist Neil deGrasse Tyson harshly criticized the movie Gravity this weekend, citing scientific inaccuracies, unforgivable scientific inaccuracies. For example, there's no way George Clooney would ever spend that much time talking to a woman his own age. That was not one of my tweets, but that's what they put. Yes, so women in space, yes.
Yes, so I'm a health writer and I write a lot about women's health, and I'm curious about what would happen when a woman gets her period in space and how women maybe have to prepare differently than men for that. And also,
So the question is, she writes about women's issues on Earth, but now that we're talking about space, she wants to know what happens if a woman gets her period in space.
yeah, and also maybe pregnancy if you know anything, because both of those are very important in determining the potential to
Yeah, so apparently she wants to repopulate the human species on the next planet she goes to and is ready to pump out the babies to make this happen, apparently. So you're right, if you have a generational ship, you need to put fertile people on board so that their offspring then have offspring, and by the time they arrive, if they're that far away, if the destination is that far away, you have healthy children that become adults and pitch tent at the destination. Okay, so everything we have learned in space tells us that because we function just fine horizontally as well as vertically, the circulation system in your body does not require gravity for it to perform. So otherwise, your circulation would stop if you were horizontal. I mean, think about that. We didn't know that. You can maybe deduce it, but we didn't know this. The very first astronauts who went to space, there was the question, what would happen if you tried to swallow? Would saliva just get stuck in the middle of your tongue? No, there's pulsing mechanisms in your system that moves fluids, and either fluids to come out of you or fluids to move through you. So it's not as deadly as it otherwise sounds. But the real answer to your question is, if you want to go someplace interesting and it takes a long time, you'll want to accelerate all the way there, or at least halfway there, turn the ship around and decelerate the rest of the way. By doing so, you have created artificial gravity. Or you rotate a rim of a turning space station and you have artificial gravity there. With artificial gravity, it's a non-problem. It's like you're on Earth. So you can have the babies, as many as you want, in space. And in here we talk about sex in space, by the way, which would be, if in 0G sex is different from 1G sex. I'm just saying, you have to brush up on your Newton laws of motion, because on Earth, much of what you might do in 0G space, you'd end up recoiling into the side walls of the cabin. And so you need Velcro and straps and things.
I feel like maybe this is a good place.
No. She started it. I'm sitting here talking about gravity tweets. So no, but you have to think this through. And so you need straps, basically.
Okay.
Which
So
I'm told some people already have. That's what I'm told, yes.
Thank you so much for answering these questions. I know that
I just want to be clear. This covers all branches of science, only some of which I have expertise in, like astrophysics. When we talk about sex in space, we have the author Mary Roach, who wrote an entire book on preparing for Mars. And she was a guest on the show, and so the conversations derive from that. And so this book is the sum of all these great conversations where we bring experts in with the celebrity guests, and it's an exploration of all the ways science has touched us. So it's not that I did those experiments or anything. I read about them, yes.
So rather than having 200 selfies, anybody who wants a picture can come. We're going to come up to the stage and do a group shot, if that's okay with you.
Group shot is fine. Yeah.
Okay.
Okay.
Okay, so everybody gather up here. Thanks, guys. Thank you.